Have you ever looked at someone and instantly made up a story about who they are? We all have. But sometimes, those silent judgments become the biggest mistakes of our lives. Emily never thought her quick glance would lead to something she'd never forget. It was early morning in downtown Chicago. The streets were waking up, coffee shops opening, buses honking, people rushing. Emily, a 32-year-old marketing executive, walked briskly toward her office, heels tapping the pavement like a ticking clock. She wore a gray coat, a leather purse hanging tightly from her shoulder, and that usual city caution in her eyes. Just behind her walked Marcus, a tall black man in his 30s, wearing a dark hoodie and carrying a backpack. His steps were slow, tired, the kind of walk that told you he'd had a long night. He worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria, helping his mother with rent after she fell sick. But to Emily, he was just another shadow behind her. She didn't see the exhaustion or the kindness, she only saw what fear wanted her to see. Her pulse quickened, she held her purse tighter. Her mind whispered ugly warnings. What if he's following me? What if he tries to take something? She crossed the street without even checking the signal, pretending it was just coincidence. Marcus stopped at the curb, noticing her sudden movement. He sighed, shaking his head. He'd seen this story play out too many times before. A few steps later, fate decided to make them meet again. At the next crosswalk, both of them stopped side by side. Emily's shoulders tensed as she avoided his eyes. Marcus looked ahead, pretending not to notice. The light took forever to turn green. The air between them felt heavy, filled with fear on one side and silent pain on the other. When the light finally changed, Marcus gave a polite nod, almost like an apology for something he didn't do, and walked off. Emily didn't respond. She just walked faster, trying to forget the moment, but deep down she couldn't. There was something about his expression, calm, patient, human, that stayed with her longer than she expected. At her office, she mentioned it to her coworker Sarah, laughing it off. There was this guy behind me, he looked kinda suspicious. Sarah shrugged. You can't be too careful these days. They both returned to work, never realizing how wrong that judgment was. Because later that very day, Emily's path would cross Marcus's again, but this time, she wouldn't be clutching her purse. She'd be clutching her life. If you believe no one should be judged by the color of their skin, tap subscribe and stay with us for Chapter 2 of Stained Humanity. The day was almost over when everything changed. Emily left her office a bit later than usual, rain beginning to fall lightly on the glassy streets of Chicago. She folded her umbrella and hurried toward the parking garage, scrolling through her phone, not really watching her surroundings. Her mind was tired, replaying meetings, emails, and small frustrations of the day. The same city that felt busy in the morning now felt strangely quiet. She didn't notice the man who stepped out from behind a pillar near the stairwell. He wasn't Marcus. He was someone else, rough-looking, desperate, eyes darting around like a cornered animal. Emily froze when he blocked her path. "Give me your purse," he said sharply. His voice cracked, and she could smell the alcohol on his breath. Emily's heart pounded so loud she could barely think. She tried to back away, clutching her purse like her life depended on it. He stepped closer. "Now," he shouted, grabbing her arm. Her scream echoed through the empty garage, bouncing off the walls, but no one came. She struggled, but he was stronger. Her purse fell to the floor, and so did she. And then, from the corner of the garage, heavy footsteps echoed. The mugger turned. Out of the shadows stepped Marcus, the same man Emily had feared that morning, the same hoodie, the same tired eyes. But this time, there was no misunderstanding who he really was. "Let her go," Marcus said firmly, his voice calm but filled with power. The mugger hesitated, then swung wildly. Marcus dodged and pushed him back, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her behind him. The attacker stumbled, tried again, but Marcus was faster. Within seconds, the man ran off into the night, disappearing between the parked cars. Emily stood shaking, her breath uneven. Marcus looked at her, not angry, not proud, just concerned. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, tears welling up, unable to form words. He bent down, picked up her purse, and handed it back to her. For a moment, their eyes met, and Emily felt something shift deep inside her. The fear she carried all day was replaced by shame, gratitude, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, humility. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice trembling. I thought you, Marcus smiled softly. You don't have to explain, I know what you thought. He turned to walk away, but Emily stopped him. Please, can I do something to thank you? He shook his head. Just remember, not every shadow means danger. As he disappeared down the steps, Emily stood still in the rain, realizing the man she had once feared had just saved her life. If this moment touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and stay with us, because in Chapter 3, Emily's guilt will lead her to a truth she never expected. Sleep didn't come easily for Emily that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus, his calm face under the flickering garage lights, his steady voice saying, "Not every shadow means danger." Those words replayed again and again until they became heavier than the fear she had once felt. She lay awake, realizing how deep her bias had been. She had feared a man who had no reason to harm her, and that same man had saved her life. The next morning, she sat by her kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, scrolling through local news. There it was, attempted robbery in downtown garage, suspect at large, but no mention of the man who had stopped it, no mention of Marcus. She stared at the article, feeling a lump in her throat. He deserves better than silence, she thought. By noon, she made up her mind. She went back to the hospital cafeteria where Marcus worked. The place smelled of coffee, soup, and tired conversations. Workers in scrubs lined up for lunch. Emily spotted him behind the counter, wearing a clean apron, serving food with that same calm patience. Her heart raced as she stepped forward. "Marcus," she said softly. He turned, a bit surprised. "Hey," he replied, wiping his hands. "You're okay?" "Yes," she said, her voice shaky. "Because of you, I've been thinking about what happened and what I thought before that." He looked at her quietly, waiting. Emily continued, "You saved me, and I was scared of you for no reason. I judged you just because you're black. That's not who I want to be." Her eyes filled with tears. Marcus sighed, a small, understanding smile on his face. "We all carry what the world teaches us," he said gently. "What matters is what we do after we realize it's wrong." Emily nodded, ashamed but grateful. "Can I at least buy you lunch?" she asked. He chuckled. "I work here, remember?" They both laughed, breaking the tension that had hung between them since that morning. Over the next few days, Emily couldn't shake the guilt completely. At her office, she started noticing small things, the jokes her coworkers made, the way people stared at the janitor, the silence that followed when race was mentioned. For the first time, she saw what had always been there, and it hurt. That night she told her daughter Lily, "Honey, never decide who someone is just by how they look." Lily nodded, asking innocently, "Like the man who saved you?" Emily smiled softly. "Yes, baby. Exactly like him." As she looked out the window into the dark city, Emily knew she couldn't undo what happened, but she could start to change and maybe help others do the same. If you believe change begins when we face our own prejudice, hit subscribe, because in Chapter 4, fate will bring Emily and Marcus together again, one last time. Months passed, but the memory of that night never left Emily. Something inside her had changed forever. She started volunteering at community events, helping organize charity drives for underprivileged kids, many from the same neighborhoods people once warned her to avoid. She spoke less, listened more, and learned that real courage wasn't about crossing the street. It was about crossing the walls built inside our own hearts. One cold afternoon, Emily walked into the hospital again, this time not as a visitor, but as a volunteer. She carried food, blankets, and small toys for children waiting in the emergency wing. And there, standing by the vending machine, was Marcus, his same calm expression, that quiet strength she would never forget. "Marcus," she called out with a smile. He turned and grinned. "Emily," he said warmly, "didn't expect to see you here again." "I'm helping out with the charity drive," she said. "I figured it was time I did something that mattered." He nodded. "Looks like you already are." For a moment, they stood in silence, both thinking back to that rainy night, how fear could have written one story, but fate chose another. Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I wanted to give you this," she said. Inside was a handwritten letter. Marcus opened it slowly. The first line made him smile. "You taught me what humanity really looks like." Marcus looked up, his eyes soft. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I did," Emily replied. "Because for a long time, I thought I was the one who needed saving from danger. But that night, I realized I needed saving from my own ignorance." Her words hung in the air like truth itself. Marcus nodded quietly. "The world changes one heart at a time," he said. "Yours just became one of them." Before leaving, Emily bent down to hand a toy to a little girl in the waiting room, a black child with bright eyes and a shy smile. The girl hugged the toy tight. Emily smiled back, her heart lighter than it had been in months. As she turned to go, she caught one last glimpse of Marcus helping an old man to his seat. For the first time, she didn't see a stranger or a headline or a threat. She saw a human being, equal, kind, and strong. Outside, the wind was cold, but the city didn't feel the same anymore. Emily walked slowly, thinking about how a single glance of fear had turned into a lifetime lesson about grace. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Stained Humanity, because every story we tell reminds the world that change begins when we see each other as human.